Howdy folks, and welcome to the My Thoughts video slash Pokedex video for Pokemon Red version. Okay, so, originally I was going to make the Pokedex video and the My Thoughts video separate, but the thing is, I wasn't going to talk over the Pokedex video anyway, so why split them up? The Pokedex video is going to be huge either way, and I figure, you know what, may as well kill two birds with one stone. Anyway, so, here we go. Holy shit, I have no idea where to begin, other than I love this game. I seriously love this game. It has some problems, but I do love this game. So, I guess I'll start off by listing the pros. I mean, you know, why not? I love this game. I'd rather list the good points about it before I get to the few bad things that I have to say about it. So, one of the good things about this game, it's huge. It is huge for an original Game Boy game. This wasn't even when they made Game Boy Color cartridges, which were bigger. It was an original Game Boy game. And it was huge in terms of overall size. I'm not sure exactly how big it was as far as file size, but the thing is, it was in 1995 is when this game came out. Now, I don't remember perfectly, however, though, I do remember that in 95, a computer with 100 megabytes for, I think, RAM was pretty huge. I mean, yeah, it's nothing compared to today, where we have these, like, I don't know, like 16 and 32 gigabyte RAM computers and shit like that. But 100 megabytes was considered huge, and I'm positive that this game's nowhere near 100 megabytes. But, you know, considering how small the file sizes for the original Game Boy actually were around that time, this game's huge. It's got so much content to it. The Pokemon look fantastic in comparison to Japan's original red and green versions. You see, our red and blue in the US is based more heavily off of their blue, which came later and had the updated art style. I was mistaken. This art style is not the first art style in Pokemon. It's the first in the US versions, though, and so that's what I actually go by because I live in the US and not Japan. But yeah, this game's huge. It has a very nice art style. A very unique art style, at the very least, compared to what comes later. I believe this game is superior to Yellow. I've mentioned various times throughout the playthrough as to why, but one, I hate Pikachu. Well, that's really a personal thing. Analyzing the games, excluding that factor, Yellow's a lot easier. They really toned down Yellow. I am completely confident in that. They give you access to all three of the starters, which, while they're not technically the best Pokemon in the game, they're really powerful, and what's more, just having access to those three in one game, one playthrough, makes you have such excellent coverage that the game really is a much easier game. And so because of that, Red is actually harder, which I enjoy. I've always enjoyed that. Let's see, what else? The music's fan-fucking-tastic. Again, considering it's an original Game Boy game, the music is great. Although, I do have to say, sometimes it can get a little bit repetitive and sound the same in areas when you've been playing for a really long time. However, though, it's still fantastic and I love it. What else? It's Pokemon. This game, it's not hard to see how Pokemon spread with such wildfire. Like, so fast, so hard, so strong. Way back when it was first released. It's probably got the highest, like, the largest growth rate from when it was released. And it's amazing. It is amazing how well this did. How well this game, this very... I'll say it, this relatively simple game. By simple, I mean just the whole concept of it. You catch Pokemon, these monsters, animals, plants, bugs, whatever. And you level them up and have them battle other animals, bugs, plants, not trainers. Although that'd be hilarious. But yeah, it's a very simple concept, and yet it's so fantastic. One of the things that makes Pokemon so fantastic, and I'm going to actually get more into this at a much later date, is the fact that it appeals to everybody. It's a game that literally anybody can get into. And that is such a huge pro. That is such a massive pro in comparison to the cons it has. Anyway, though, I suppose I better get into the cons now, because I'm running out of pros to say, even though there are so many that I haven't listed. But I've said so much about it during the playthrough that, you know, we can move on to the cons. Okay, so the biggest con, and the one that during this LP I feel stood out the most, and the one that is kind of a mixed bag here, because I can kind of look past it, considering that this is the first generation of Pokemon, and so I can understand that there will be flaws in the programming. However, though, I cannot look... At the same time, I can't look past it, because even just playtesting, they would have been able to figure this out relatively simply. And not to mention, I've already mentioned this, but our Red and Blue is based off of Japan's Blue, which came after their Red and Green. I don't know how long after their Red and Green, but long enough for them to update the art. I'd be willing to bet that if they just did even a simple playthrough, they'd probably realize that the AI is a little bit flawed. More than a little bit, I'll admit. I was shocked towards the end at how kind of frustratingly bad it was, because up until this playthrough, I'd always considered Red and Blue to be the hardest in the Pokemon game series, as far as the main games go. I'm not counting spin-offs such as Mystery Dungeon or anything like that, which, even then, I haven't played the Mystery Dungeon games. A little shock there. But anyway, my point is that of the mainstream games, I considered Red and Blue to be the hardest in the series. And during this LP, while I was actually playing the game and recording it, I didn't notice the huge AI flaw, which maybe that's why the programmers didn't pick up on it. During the video editing and commentating, though, I really noticed it. And because I can't completely look over that, it does kind of hurt the game. And I actually, after this LP, no longer consider it the hardest Pokemon game. I do consider it the second hardest generation of Pokemon, though. I do consider it the second hardest. Pokemon Black and White 1, I do consider harder. But, you know, I'm going to talk about that later. So, it does hurt it a little bit that the AI is not pretty flawed, but it is relatively flawed. Another major con is the massive imbalance. And I'm referring to something that I've been referring to for fucking ever during this LP, and that's Psychic-type Pokemon. Psychic-type Pokemon, they really are a massively unbalanced type. The thing is that nothing is resistant to Psychic-type, for one. Nothing is resistant to those type attacks. Things are only ever weak against those types of attacks. So that means Psychic-type is always going to do at least normal damage against a Pokemon. If not, then super effective. The other thing is that it, in theory, only has two weaknesses. And that is Bug, which can actually work as a weakness. However, there are so few actually good Bug Pokemon that learn one of the only two Bug-type attacks that are actually relatively decent. And that's Twin Needle and Pin Missile. If you want to have a little bit of an extra edge as far as Bug-type moves go, Jolteon actually does learn Pin Missile. So there is that. And it's not a Bug-type, and it has good stats and whatnot. But anyway, the point is that not very many Bug Pokemon... One, there aren't actually very many good Bug Pokemon by the end of the game, which is really when Psychic starts becoming a problem. And because there isn't really any good Bug Pokemon, that no Bug-type attacks, I do have to stress that. The Bug-type attacks are what I'm referring to. As far as normal attacks go, you can use Scyther, Pinsir, Venomoth. Venomoth is an excellent one. Butterfree if you know how to use it properly. There are good bug Pokemon, but not very many that learn good bug attacks. Anyway, though, so that type it can be done. For example, Beedrill is a bug-type Pokemon that learns Twin Needle, which is, honestly, in my opinion, probably the best bug-type attack. However, though, it is Poison/Bug, I believe, or Poison/Flying, I don't remember. I'm pretty sure it's Bug/Poison, but it's Poison is the point, which is weak against Psychic attacks, and I can guarantee you a Kadabra or even an Alakazam or a Kadabra, probably even a Hypno, can outrun a Beedrill. So that weakness really, it doesn't really affect Psychic-type Pokemon. What's more, even with the weakness, it's going to take at least 2 attacks to knock out a Psychic-type Pokemon, which, if Psychic Pokemon are going to be faster than your Pokemon, that means they're going to get to hit you with 2 attacks before you can knock them out, meaning they're going to win. They're going to knock your Pokemon out. And so because of that, I don't consider Bug really an effective weakness, aside from some of the dual-typed Psychic-type Pokemon. For example, Executor is Grass/Psychic, so it gets a ×4 weakness. The other type is a flat-out lie. It is a flat-out lie. The game, even in-game, flat-out lies about it. Ghost type is not actually a weakness in this first generation to Psychic-type Pokemon. There are only 2 Psychic attacks in this first generation that actually do damage. Ghost-type attacks that actually do damage in the first generation. And that's possibly Lick. I have to look into it still. But Lick in later games is a Ghost-type move. And yet, if you recall, when I was in Lavender Tower, Ghastly's Lick didn't affect Drowsy at all. When it says it doesn't affect Drowsy, that means it never will. It's not the same as when it says it didn't affect. It doesn't affect means it never will. It doesn't affect Psychic-type Pokemon. The other one is Nightshade, which still hits Psychic Pokemon, but it's like Seismic Toss, in that it will only do the same amount of damage as whatever level you are. I love Seismic Toss, and I love Nightshade too for this. However, though, it's not actually a weakness to Psychic-type Pokemon are not actually weak against it, because it'll never do double damage, or super effective damage. And so because of that, its Ghost-type is not in any way strong against Psychic-type. In fact, there are only 3 Ghost-type Pokemon, all in the same line, Ghastly, Haunter, and Gengar. All 3 of these Pokemon are Ghost/Poison, meaning Psychic is super effective against them. Now, Gengar might be able to outrun Alakazam, I don't know. It's pretty close as far as their speed. Their stats are actually surprisingly similar. However, though, because Gengar has no moves that will knock out an Alakazam in one hit, Alakazam's always going to get the knockout. Always. Always. The only chance that it wouldn't is if you were to use Confuse Ray, Hypnosis, shit like that. In a straight-up attack situation, Alakazam's always going to KO Gengar. Kadabra's always going to KO a Gengar. Hypno, any Psychic Pokemon really, is always going to KO a Gengar. And the game flat out lies to you and tries telling you that Ghost Pokemon and Ghost-type attacks are super effective against Psychic. So Psychic really is unbalanced as far as power goes in this first generation. It gets fixed somewhat. It's still a powerhouse in the next generation, but I'll talk about that during that generation's playthrough. In the first generation, it is horribly unbalanced and overpowered. And because of that, Psychic-type Pokemon are the hardest Pokemon, not only to beat, but the hardest ones to... just hardest to beat in general. They're also the most overpowered. If you have a team with a Kadabra, a Hypno, an Executor, a Slowbro. Slowbro is a fantastic Psychic Pokemon that you can get relatively easily. If you have a team of just Psychic-type Pokemon, you're going to tear this game a new one. It's not going to be able to stand up to you. And so because of that, that is a pretty big con for Pokemon Red. Another big con, but it is one that I can... Well, actually, I can't overlook this one. I really wish I could say I could, but I can't because they were obviously aware of this really broken strategy because they reuse it, or rather, they have a in Pokemon Stadium in the Gym Leader Castle, Pokemon Stadium 1. When you get towards the end, you battle Lance. Lance has at the very least one Pokemon, one of his Dragon Pokemon, I think it's his Dragonair, that will use Thunder Wave and then Wrap. It uses the Paralyzed Wrap strategy. And even if you switch out Pokemon, it's still going to use Thunder Wave on that Pokemon and try and wrap that one. You switch again, because you can only use 3 Pokemon in the Gym Leader Castle battles, I believe. It'll still Thunder Wave and try to wrap that. Basically, you're fucked no matter what you do, unless you can KO the Dragonair on your first turn, which is unimaginably hard to do in the first generation. It is unimaginably hard to do in the first generation. And because of this, they were obviously aware of how broken and overpowered Wrap actually is. I've mentioned so many times during this playthrough that I fucking hate Wrap in the first generation. And if only they wouldn't have actually made a trainer in the Gym Leader Castle programmed to actually use this strategy, I'd probably be able to overlook it and say that it was just them not realizing just how overpowered that strategy is. But no, they were clearly aware of it, and so I can't overlook that. I really wish I could, but I can't. That is another massive con. Aside from those, I can't really think of a whole lot of cons. I suppose some people would consider Missing No a con, because it's technically a glitch. A glitch in the sense that it really shouldn't have been able to happen in the first place, and they actually fix it, well, for the most part, in Yellow. However, though, I can't count that as a con because it doesn't hurt you in any way. Aside from the fact that it screws up your Pokemon League Hall of Fame thingy with the PC, when you look it up on the PC in the game, aside from that, it doesn't hurt you in any way. It only helps you, so I can't count that as a con. Yeah, that's pretty much it for cons. So I suppose that takes us to the new part of these My Thought videos that I was actually debating whether or not I wanted to start doing this, because the thing is that I'm actually a fairly casual gamer. I'm fairly casual about gaming. I mean, I used to be a much more hardcore gamer than I am now, but I'm relatively casual and I like it that way. So I was on the fence about whether or not I actually feel like I'd be qualified to actually rate games that I've played. However, though, I have played them, I do have opinions about them, and I'm trying to look at each game objectively without having nostalgia factor in. I think I've done a pretty good job of that. Especially for Pokemon Red, because this is way high up there on nostalgia. It's not my favorite Pokemon game, but it is way up there. And so I try to factor out nostalgia and go purely objective on as far as these games go. That being said, I also want to take into consideration the fact that, you know, when the games were made. For example, I'm not going to knock it as far as graphical apparel goes, because it was an original Game Boy game, as I've mentioned towards the beginning of this video. Because it was the original Game Boy game, of course they're going to have limited graphical power. You know, that's just the way it goes. While Yellow improves the graphics of these Pokemon somewhat, it's still not that big of an improvement, more of a changed art style. And so, because it's an original Game Boy and all that, I can't really judge it based off of graphical appeal. I can't judge the graphics, because by today's standards, of course they're going to look like shit. I mean, come on, people. This was way back in 1995. Way back in 1995. In 2 years, that'll be 20 years. And holy shit, that makes me quite sad. Anyway. So things like that. So enough pussyfooting around, I suppose. I'm probably going to piss a shitload of people off with this, but overall, I'm probably going to have to rate Pokemon Red an 8 out of 10. Again, I was really on the fence about giving actual number ratings towards the games during these My Thoughts videos, because I'm so casual about gaming in comparison to a lot of people, but based off of my objective view during this LP, I feel an 8 is all the more I can give it while still being honest and not factoring in nostalgia. The pros of the game far outweigh the cons. They far outweigh the cons. And so it does receive a pretty good rating. I've said this before, and I'll say it again, there is no such thing as a perfect game. So I probably won't be giving out very many 10s to the games I play. There's only a small handful that I would consider that, well, that good of a game. So I feel like an 8 is a very, very appropriate rating for Pokemon Red. I'm probably pissing so many people off by saying it's an 8, not a 10 out of 10, but it does have flaws. People gotta be honest. There are flaws in it. However, though, it is the first Pokemon game. There's gonna be flaws. So, yeah. An 8 out of 10. I think that's a very solid rating. That would be a B if it was a grade. I love Pokemon Red. It's fantastic. If you're a Pokemon fan and you haven't played this game yet, I highly recommend you try it. In some form or another. This is actually a game that I really wish they'd put in the 3DS shop. If they can put Kirby's Dream Land into the 3DS shop, or Sonic Triple Trouble from the Game Gear, there's no fucking reason they can't put Pokemon Red and Blue, or Yellow, or any of the old Pokemon games at all. The 3DS shop, it opens up so many opportunities for things like this. But I'll probably talk about that in a different video. Anyway, I'm Gene the Pink Panther. This has been the My Thoughts video, a little bit longer than I wanted, probably because I had so many opinions and cons and pros of the game. Plus, I probably rambled a little bit. Anyway, I'm going to end the My Thoughts portion of the video. Basically, all that's left for you guys in this video is the Pokedex entries, which I'm not reading off, and I'm going to be playing... Well, you've already been hearing the music, but I'm going to be playing music from the game Pokemon Battle Revolutions for the Nintendo Wii. It's got such a fantastic soundtrack, and I feel it's better than you guys listening to a town theme from Red for 30-some minutes. Anyway, this concludes My Thoughts. By all means, feel free to post. Tell me why I'm wrong about my opinion. Tell me why I'm right. Tell me if there's something that you feel I missed out on as far as the My Thoughts video goes that should have been in here. If I happen to agree with your opinion and what you say, I'll go ahead and make a follow-up video, or I'll re-edit this one and include it. And give you credit, of course, for coming up with that opinion. Anywho, I'm Gene the Pink Panther. The next game isn't going to be a Pokemon game. Pokemon Crystal won't come for a little while. And what's more, there are more Pokemon games that I'm doing before Crystal. And so Pokemon Crystal won't come for a short while. Not too long of a while, but a short while. The next really big game that's going to be tackled is the one that I started at about the same time as this one last year, and that's Chrono Trigger. I got to get that one finished as well. Fortunately, all the footage is recorded. I've been working on editing it, and that'll be coming very soon. Before that, though, there is a surprise LP, and it's going to be very short, I promise. It's not going to be Super Mario Bros. 3 short. It's going to be shorter than that. Because, well, I'm as cool as the Earth is blue. Anyway, I'm Gene the Pink Panther. Stay tuned for the next game that I do. Or if you're not wanting to watch that, and you want to skip straight to the Chrono Trigger playthrough, that'll be up before you know it. Or if you're just waiting for the next Pokemon game, the next one that I will be showing off is going to be the Pokemon Trading Card game for Game Boy Color. Anyway, once again, Gene the Pink Panther. I've said that like 5 times now. I'll see you guys next time. See ya!